Hi, everybody. So we are on the second chapter of The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. And I'm going to be reading The Law of Prosperity this morning. And we're going to get started. And grab a pen and a paper if you want to take some notes. We're going to be talking about the chapter in just a minute once I'm done with the chapter. And if you like videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and like so that you don't miss my next one. All right, let's get started. The law of prosperity. Yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. That's the first quote. One of the greatest messages given to the race through the scriptures is that God is man's supply, and that man can release through his spoken word all that belongs to him by divine right. He must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word. I'm going to underline that one. Okay. Isaiah said, quote, "My word shall not return unto me void, but shall accomplish that whereunto it is sent." We know now that words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force, every molding man's body, ever molding man's body and affairs. Let me reread that one. Words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force. Okay. A woman came to me in great distress and said she was to be sued on the 15th of the month for $3,000. She knew no way of getting the money and was in despair. I told her God was her supply and that there is a supply for every demand. So I spoke the word. I gave thanks that the woman would receive $3,000 at the night, at the right time, in the right way. I told her she must have perfect faith and act on her perfect faith. The 15th came, but no money had materialized. She called me on the phone and asked what she was to do. I replied, "It is Saturday, so they don't sue you today. So they won't sue you today. Your part is to act rich, thereby showing perfect faith that you will receive it by Monday." She asked me to lunch with her to keep up her courage. When I joined her at a restaurant, I said, "This is no time to economize. Order an expensive luncheon. Act as if you have already received the $3,000. All things whatsoever ye ask in prayer, believing ye shall receive." End quote. You must act as if you had already received. Let me repeat that. You must act as if you had already received. The next morning, she called me on the phone and asked me to stay with her during the day. I said, "No, you are divinely protected and God is never too late." That's a good one. God is never too late. In the evening, she phoned again, greatly excited, and said, "My dear, a miracle has happened. I was sitting in my room this morning when the doorbell rang. I said to the maid, 'Don't let anyone in.' The maid, however, looked out the window and said, 'It's your cousin from the long with the long white beard.' So I said, 'Call him back. I would like to see him.' He was just turning the corner when he heard the maid's voice, and he came back. He talked for an hour, and just as he was leaving, he said, 'Oh, by the way, how are your finances?' I told him I needed money, and he said, 'Why, my dear, I will give you $3,000 the first of the month.' I didn't like to tell him that I was going to get sued. What shall I do? I won't receive it till the first of the month, and I must have it tomorrow. I said, I'll keep on treating. I said, Scripture is never too late. I give thanks she has received the money on the invisible plane and that it manifests on time. The next morning, her cousin called her up and said, "Come to my office this morning and I will give you the money." That afternoon, she had $3,000 to her credit in the bank and wrote checks as rapidly as her excitement would permit. If one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get the situation he has prepared for. For example, a man came to me asking me to speak the word for a certain debt would be wiped out. I found he spent his time planning what he would say to the man when he did not pay his bill, thereby neutralizing my words. He, sh- he should have seen himself paying the debt. We have a wonderful illustration of this in the Bible, relating to the three kings who were in the desert without water for their men and horses. They consulted the prophet Elijah, who gave them this astonishing message. Thus said the Lord, ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches. Man must prepare for the thing he has asked for when there isn't the slightest sign of it in sight. That's a good one. For example, a woman found it necessary to look for an apartment during the year when there was a great shortage of apartments in New York. It was considered almost an impossibility, and her friends were sorry for her and said, isn't it too bad you'll have to store your furniture and live in a hotel? She replied, you needn't feel sorry for me. I'm a superman, and I'll get an apartment. She spoke the words, Infinite Spirit, open the way for the right apartment. She knew there was a supply for every demand and that she was unconditioned working on the spiritual plane and that one with God is a majority. She had contemplated buying new blankets when temper, the adverse thought or reasoning mind suggested, don't buy the blankets. Perhaps, after all, you won't get an apartment and you will have no use for them. She promptly replied to herself, I'll dig my ditches by buying the blankets. So she prepared for the apartment, acted as though she already had it. She found one in a miraculous way, and it was given to her, although there were over 200 other applicants. The blankets showed active faith. It is needless to say that the ditches dug by the three kings in the desert was filled to overflowing. Read 2 Kings. Getting into the spiritual swing of things is no easy matter for the average person. The adverse thoughts of doubts and fear surge from the subconscious. They are the quote, army of the aliens, which must be put to flight. This explains why it is so often darkest before the dawn. A big demonstration is usually preceded by tormenting thoughts. Having made a statement of high spiritual truth, one challenges the old belief in the subconscious, and error is exposed to be put out. This is the time when one must take his affirmations of truth repeatedly and rejoice and give thanks that he has already received. Quote, before ye call, I shall answer. This means that every good and perfect gift is already man's awaiting his recognition. Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. Oh, this book is just so full of amazing quotes. The children of Israel were told that they could have all the land they could see. This is true of every man. He has only the land within his own mental vision. Every great work, every big accomplishment has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision. And often, just before the big achievement, comes apparent failure and discouragement. The children of Israel, when they reached the promised land, were afraid to go in, for they said it was filled with giants who made them feel like grasshoppers. And there we saw the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers. This is almost every man's experience. However, the one who knows spiritual law is undisturbed by appearance and rejoices while he is yet in captivity. That is, he holds to his vision and gives thanks that the end is accomplished. He has received. Jesus Christ gave a wonderful example of this. He said to his disciples, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest." That was a question. Sorry. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are ripe already to harvest. His clear vision pierced the world of matter, and he saw clearly the fourth dimensional world, things as they really are, perfect and complete and divine mind. No man must ever hold the vision of his journey's end and demand the manifestation of that which he has already received. It may be his perfect health, love, supply, self expression, home, or friends. Let me repeat that. So, man must ever hold the vision of his journey's end and demand the manifestation of that which he has already received. It may be his perfect health, love, supply, self expression, home, or friends. They are all finished and perfect ideas registered in divine mind, man's own superconscious mind, and must come through him, not to him. For example, a man came to me asking for treatment for success. It was imperative that he raise within a certain time $50,000 for his business. The time limit was almost up, and when he came to me in despair, no one wanted to invest in his enterprise, and the bank had flatly refused a loan. I replied, I suppose you lost your temper while at the bank, therefore your power. You can control any situation if you first control yourself. Go back to the bank, I added, and I will treat. My treatment was, quote, you are identified in love with the spirit of everyone connected with the bank. Let the divine idea come out of this situation. He replied, Woman, you are talking about an impossibility. Tomorrow is Saturday. The bank closes at 12, and my train won't get there until 10, and the time limit is up tomorrow. And anyway, they won't do it. It's too late. I replied, God doesn't need any time, and it's never too late. With him, all things are possible. I added, I don't know anything about business, but I know all about God. He replied, It all sounds fine when I sit here listening to you, but when I go out, it's terrible. He lived in a distant city, and I did not hear from him for a week. Then came a letter. It read, You were right. I raised the money, and I will never again doubt the truth of all that you told me. I saw him a few weeks later and I said, What happened? You evidently had plenty of time. After all, he replied, My train was late and I got there just 15 minutes to 12. I walked into the bank quietly and said, I have come for the loan, and they gave it to me without a question. It was the last 15 minutes of the time allotted to him. An infinite spirit was not too late. In this instance, the man could never have demonstrated alone. He needed someone to help him hold the vision. This is what one man can do for another. Jesus Christ knew the truth of this when he said, quote, "If two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven." One gets too close to his own affairs and becomes doubtful and fearful. The friend or healer sees clearly the success, the health or prosperity, and never wavers because he is not alone to the situation. It is much easier to demonstrate for someone else than for oneself. So a person should not hesitate to ask for help. Hmm. Um, if he feels himself wavering. A keen observer of life once said, "No man can fail if someone person sees him successful." Such is the power of the vision. And the many a great man has owed his success to a wife or sister or friend who believed in him and held without wavering to the perfect pattern. Wow, that was an amazing chapter. Okay, let's go back to some of the things that sort of stood out here. Um, Faith. He must, I think the book covers faith a little more later on. So I love the he must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word. So um not only do you speak it kind of like an affirmation, but it's also like feeling it. It's requiring us to feel it. Um, and then words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force. And this reminds me of listening to near-death experience testimonials on Jeff Mara. Jeff Mara is a YouTuber that interviews people who've had near-death experiences. And in there, he talks about um, the I'm sorry, not him, but the people he interviews, a lot of them say that when they were dead, before they came back to life, they saw people's prayers as light beams. And when there was a group prayer, the beams of light would be thicker. So yeah, I definitely agree. And I believe very strongly that our thoughts and our words are a tremendous vibratory force, which is why we have to be very careful how we speak to others and how we speak of others, even when they're not around. Um, okay, act her perfect faith. So our part to play, what is our part to play? And our part to play, and it's interesting because Amanda Francis from Rich as Fuck in that book also talks about what is, you playing a part. And that is the work that we do to manifest. So our part is to act. So if you want to manifest money, act rich. What does that look like? If we want to be like even healthy, I'm thinking of healthy or um, let's say I want to lose weight. So act thin. What does a thin person act like? Or what does, I know it sounds so silly saying it, but though that is the kind of work that is required in today's spiritual journey. Um, you must act as if you had already received. You must act as if you have already received. This is very similar to Neville Goddard. Um, and a lot of the new thought people must have read her work because this is definitely very middle of the line, new thought stuff. The new stuff I've discovered here is God is never too late. And I think that's my new favorite quote. God is never too late. So a lot of times we feel like we're gonna that we have to worry so much about timing. Um, and it kind of takes that off our plate. Like we don't have to worry about timing. God is never too late, too early. It's infinite intelligence. So we don't have to worry about time at all. Um, and the word treating, I was at a New Thought church for quite a while, and they use that word a lot, treatment, and that is synonymous with saying things in a way that you mean them. So you're treating. I think we're always treating. Think about how we're always, if our words are as important as they are, we're always treating, like 24/7. Whenever we're awake and we're talking, we're thinking. Um, says if one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get situation he is prepared for. I think that is fantastic quote for people because especially in this day and age, people are really um, get really discouraged if they don't become famous right away, or if their first attempt is not the the most amazing thing they've ever created. These are for creators. I mean, think about anything like a comic, a book writer, YouTube videos, a content creator. I mean, it spans across all walks of life, but just it kind of encourages us to put our nose to the grind and just hold on, let me plug my computer in. Kind of encourages us to put our nose to the grind and just work towards our end goal um and act like prepare. Whatever that looks like to you is very important. Like prepare. Um so um yeah, whatever that looks like to you. Um sorry, my heater went out. It's just weird. I'm in the basement, so it's a little cooler down here. Um the concept of neutralizing words. So here she says that she found out that he was actually planning for something else. He was planning on what he would do if he didn't get the money and then he'll have to pay the bills. So he was spending, let's say 90% of his time worrying about, oh, what am I going to do if this manifestation doesn't work? So you're going to get what you plan for. So I guess the best thing to do is either journal or go for a walk and figure out what it is you want and plan for it. Plan for what's going to happen once you get it. Somehow send your subconscious a message that you are preparing for success. And what does that look like? And for all of us, it's going to look different. Um, so, and we don't have to have any signs that these things are coming our way. It says man must prepare for the things he has asked for when there isn't the slightest sign of it in sight. So we're preparing for the things we asked for, even though there's um, no clues that this is even going to happen. And that is the crux of faith. And I think she does cover this afterwards, but I'm skipping here. Um, a new thing that I've come to realize with her work is she knew there was a supply for every demand. So that makes you realize that there's enough for everyone. So whatever demand you have, there's a supply for it. So you just have to imagine it. You just have to have it in you to imagine it, and then there is a supply for it. Um, like and then going back to the preparation part, digging the ditches, and I think I'm going to use that from now on. I'll dig my ditches by buying the blankets. So she went ahead and bought the blankets, although She might not get this place, but buying the blankets showed faith that she would. So, in what ways are you digging your ditches? I'm trying to think of ways that I dig my ditches. Um, yeah, okay, so here's one. I trying to write a book and a kid's book. I have this idea that's been sort of percolating in my head for a while. I have several, but one of them that I'm really excited about. And I I want to be the illustrator of my book. And so what I did is I was wondering whether I should spend like $600 to get myself a drawing device, which is like a tablet, and and uh, so that I could illustrate the book because I could easily illustrate it on paper, but most book illustrations these days are digital. So buying the iPad to illustrate the book showed that I'm digging my ditches. So I'm showing faith that this is the direction we're going into. So sometimes you have to um, walk into thin air or walk into air knowing that you're going to be supported. And so that's sort of what's called for. And my heater is not working. That's so weird. I think it finally gave out. Yeah. Um, all right. Um, I was very excited to hear that a big demonstration is usually preceded by tormenting thoughts. So it's interesting because it does kind of test you a little bit. So a lot of times if things don't work out, people just give up. And it's so important to just persevere and hold. She has the word here, which is great. It's holding the vision, holding to the vision. And so holding to the vision encourages you to work past any kind of challenges you may experience um, during the tormenting part where um, something is about to happen. That's when it's hardest. That's when things become the hardest. Um, Man can only receive what he sees himself receiving. Men can only receive what he sees himself receiving. And that is why I always think um, our imagining faculty is the most important thing in manifesting. And and I usually will use like a journaling to like encourage that imagining faculty because not all of us are like born with this ability to just imagine things. And like we're not a society that encourages imagination. And we're very fact based, like we have to see it to believe it. So yeah, so imagination is something that we need to work on. And the way that I work on it is definitely writing about it or just giving yourself time where your imagination can kind of have free reign. Um, and that is how inspired thoughts come through, or inspired actions that you are encouraged to take come through. Um, Again, back to holding to the vision. Um, World of matter. I was shocked that she addressed fourth dimensional world. I mean, she wrote this, um, let's see when this was first published. Um, 1925, originally published. So here in this book, she's saying, um, fourth dimensional world. and the world of matter. So she's acknowledging that there's other ways of existing that do not require us to engage with matter, that we're engaging with um, in a different sort of dimension when we're working with what she's offering here. Um, Divine mind and must come through him, not to him. So she equates here divine mind to our super conscious mind. And that is what I personally call universal mind or infinite intelligence. Because when we clear ourselves, we're able to then connect to the superconscious mind. So when I say clear, it could be like meditation, it could be a hike in the woods, it could be journaling, it could be doing cognomovement. Um, so divine mind for her is what I usually refer to as infinite intelligence. And I do believe that we can tap into that when we clear our chakras or when we resonate to a higher frequency and work on staying there. Because not every day are we going to be at the highest frequency. I think we go in and out, like depending on how our day is going, how our physicality is going, who we meet, who we're around, what we're doing for the day. So our frequency is always going, changing all the time. And yeah, so that's interesting that she mentioned that there. Um, the divine idea, that I'm a little puzzled by what that means. If you guys have a comment about that, I would love to hear it. But the divine idea come out of the situation. Um, what is the divine idea? Um, and I always think of ourselves as sovereign and that we have complete control over our destiny. So what does the divine idea mean? It sort of conflicts a little bit with how I feel about the future and what happens to me and how much control I have over my future. So I would love to hear what you think in the comments. And I want to end with um, the awesome part at the end where it says, um, let's see, one, yeah, one gets too close to his own affairs and becomes doubtful and fearful. So the friend or healer, and this is great because this is really helpful to me because it helps me rethink my role or reposition my role as someone who works in energy. So the friend or quote healer sees clearly the success, health, or prosperity and never wavers because he is not too close to the situation. So when I do Akashic readings, it's easier for me to do readings. Well, not just Akashic. When I do spirit readings or when I do, um, sometimes I practice doing mediumship readings, but it's so much easier to tune in to someone you don't know. Um, uh, well, to someone else rather than myself. Like if I try to do my reading or someone I know closely, it's a little harder. But um, but that's not really what they're saying here. What they're saying here is that we need someone to hold that vision for us, and that is for us who work with energy or our practitioners. What that is the role that we serve. We are holding that vision and we're reflecting back what we see. And that is why I started doing Akashic readings to begin with, because I would meet people and I would see them doing something different than what they're doing. And I would just tell them, I'm like, hey, you can do this or you can do that. And I would say it with such certainty because that's how I felt. I felt a, a sense of certainty that was unwavering. And within weeks, um, they would manifest that. And this happened several times. You can look her up. There's this artist, a friend of, acquaintance of mine, and her name is Kanchan Bols. And we used to be closer because we worked together. And we became friends actually after we stopped working together. And I remember visiting her and seeing the work she was doing, or she came to one of my art shows, I think. And she said, "Oh, I would love to do this." And I looked at her and I said, "You can do this. Absolutely you can do it." And I just remember just vaguely saying that. But then what I do remember is her coming back around and actually reminding me that I had said that to her, because I often would say things to people and wouldn't remember. But and she has artwork everywhere, and she's definitely an artist, and she has two kids who are also incredibly creative. So holding that vision, seeing them um, in that light is a way that you can support others. And it also is a testament to the power of the vision. How important that is to have someone there to hold that vision for you for when you waver and when you feel like doubts uh, in your own vision. So it's really important to be surrounded by people who hold that vision for you. So such a powerful chapter. Um, so much to learn here, and I would love, love, love to hear your comments in about this book and whether you're enjoying this series. Um, I'm going to be posting the next one soon after. And again, if you found this video today and you enjoy receiving videos like this about this book I'm reading, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And I will soon place the next video in the description section so that you can easily find it. All right. All right. Have a wonderful day.